Humanity has always divided the world into two irreconcilable halves. On one side, science, cold, calculating, operating with facts, formulas, and proofs. On the other side, religion, ancient, mystical, demanding blind faith and speaking in the language of metaphors. For centuries, these two camps have waged a war of annihilation. Physicists laughed at theologians, calling their tales primitive, and priests anathematized scientists for their pride. But what if they were talking about the same thing all along? What if the Bible is not a collection of myths by Bronze Age shepherds, but encrypted documentation? And what if science is merely an attempt to reverse engineer the source code written by the Creator? We decided to do the impossible. We took two of the most gigantic and seemingly incompatible data sets in human history. The first data set consists of the sacred texts of the Abrahamic religions, the Torah, the canonical Bible, ancient Apocrypha, and the text of the Dead Sea Scrolls in the original languages. The second data set is the aggregate of all modern scientific knowledge: astrophysics, quantum mechanics, string theory, biology, genetics, and cybernetics. We uploaded these terabytes of information into the analytical core of the artificial intelligence system, Logos 7. Our goal was simple and terrifying: to find correlations, to find matches, to find the truth. And when Logos 7 finished processing the data, the results made us freeze in stupor. The system didn't just find matches, it revealed an identical structure. The scenario described in the first chapter of the book of Genesis overlays mathematically precisely onto modern cosmological models, and even more shockingly, onto the launch protocol of a complex computer simulation. Welcome to the first chapter of our investigation. This is Protocol Genesis. Let's start from the very beginning, from absolute zero. The first line of the Bible is known to everyone. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. But Logos 7 suggests we look at these words not as poetry, but as a system launch report. The original Hebrew text uses the word Bereshit, which means in the beginning, or in the head, at the foundation. The system matched this with the concept of time initialization in physics. Before the Big Bang, the concept of time did not exist. There was no before. There was only a singularity, a point of infinite density and temperature where the laws of physics as we know them do not apply. The Bible describes the state of the world at this moment with surprisingly precise words. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep. The phrase without form and void in the original sounds like tohu vabohu. This is an idiom meaning chaos, formlessness, a lack of structure. We loaded the semantic meaning of tohu vabohu into Logos 7 and asked it to find an analog in modern science in the IT sphere. The system's answer was instantaneous. In astrophysics, this is the state of the quantum vacuum, the primordial chaos before the start of the inflationary expansion of the universe. And in programming, this is the state of uninitialized memory. It is null, emptiness, absence of data, a black monitor screen before voltage is applied to the video card. Next, the text reads, "And the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters." For centuries, theologians argued about the meaning of these words. But Logos 7, having analyzed the context, gives us a technical interpretation. In ancient languages, the word water was often used as a synonym for primordial matter, the chaotic substance of which everything consists. If we look at this through the prism of simulation theory, the spirit, or the active force scanning this chaos, is the read-write head of a hard drive, or if you will, a cursor ready to begin executing code. It is the process of preparing the runtime environment. The system is ready. RAM is allocated, waiting for a command, and the command arrives. The third verse of the first chapter of Genesis. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. This is perhaps the most important moment in the entire history of the universe. Note, God does not create light with his hands. He does not mold it. He does not build it. He speaks a word. He gives a voice command. From the perspective of computer science, this is the input of executable code, the command run, execute, or print. We asked Logos 7 to compare this biblical event with the Big Bang Theory. According to the standard cosmological model, the universe emerged 13.8 billion years ago as a result of a colossal release of energy. In the first moments, the universe was filled with photons, particles of light. It was a flash of unimaginable brightness. All space was light. The Bible says, "Let there be light." Science says, a release of photonic energy occurred. The difference is only in terminology. But Logos 7 went even further. The system analyzed this event from the perspective of launching a virtual reality. Imagine putting on a VR headset. What do you see in the first second? Darkness. Then the engine loads, and the first thing that happens is the rendering of light sources. Without light, there is no image, no information, no observable reality. The command, "Let there be light," is the activation of the pixels of the universal monitor. It is applying power to the matrix. Interestingly, the Bible separates the creation of light from the creation of light sources, the sun and stars, which appear only on the fourth day. For a long time, atheists used this as an argument against the credibility of Scripture. How can there be light without the sun? That's absurd. But Logos 7 points out that science confirms precisely the biblical order, not everyday logic. According to cosmology, for the first 380,000 years, the universe was filled with glowing plasma. Light was everywhere. It permeated all space. And only hundreds of millions of years later did gravity gather matter into the first stars. That is, first appeared the phenomenon of light itself, the background radiation, and only then, concrete luminaries. The biblical author, living thousands of years before the discovery of photons, described the chronology with frightening accuracy. First light as energy, then luminaries as objects. The probability of guessing this by chance, according to our system's calculations, is 1/1000,000,000. Moving on. And God saw the light, that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. Here, Logos 7 draws our attention to a fundamental principle of digital logic. Separating light from darkness is the creation of binary code, 1 and 0, signal present and signal absent, true and false, being and non-being. Our entire digital civilization, the entire internet, all programs are built on this simple division. Without the separation into yes and no, information transmission is impossible. At the moment the Creator separated light from darkness, he laid the binary foundation for programming our reality. This was the first bit of information in the universe. Then comes the second day. And God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters." The word firmament in translations can be confusing. The original uses the word rakia, which means expanse, spread out, dome, or sphere. It refers to the creation of an atmosphere and the separation of states of matter. Logos 7 draws a parallel with the formation of planetary crust and atmosphere. But even more interesting is the analogy with computer modeling. When a developer creates a game level, they first set the boundaries. They create a skybox, the sky, and a terrain, the ground. They separate textures. They structure the space so that objects can exist within it. Without this separation, everything would merge into a single glitch, into texture soup. God here acts as a system architect, structuring the database so that files do not overwrite each other. The third day, the appearance of dry land and vegetation. Logos 7 notes a strict logical sequence. First, the environment is created, ocean and land, and only then are the objects that use this environment loaded, plants. This is a basic principle of object-oriented programming. First the class and environment, then instances of objects. You cannot spawn a tree in a void. It needs coordinates on a surface. The Bible describes the process of step-by-step asset loading, 3D models of our world. First, the landscape geometry is loaded. Then textures of grass and trees are applied. The fourth day causes the most questions among skeptics: the creation of the sun, moon, and stars. As we said, light was created on the first day. Why wait until the fourth to create sources? Logos 7 offers an unexpected hypothesis based on the theory of relativity and the observable universe. If we live in a simulation, then distant objects, like far-off stars and galaxies, do not require detailed rendering at the very beginning. They are needed only for navigation and timekeeping. The Bible explicitly states the purpose of the luminaries, for signs and seasons, and for days and years. These are the system clock. This is a timer. Before the fourth day, time might have flowed non-linearly, or its tracking was unnecessary. But with the appearance of an observer and biological life, synchronization of processes was required. The sun and moon are a metronome setting the clock cycle of our reality's processor. Without them, life cycles on Earth would be impossible. The Logos 7 system sees this as setting global time variables in the universe's code. The fifth and sixth days, creation of living creatures, first aquatic, then birds, then beasts, and finally, man. Evolutionists will say this is a simplified scheme of life's development. But let's look at this through the eyes of artificial intelligence. Logos 7 compares this to the complication of bot behavior algorithms. First, simple scripts are created. Fish, moving along simple trajectories. Then, algorithms become more complex. Navigation in three-dimensional space is added. Birds. Then complex ground units with advanced artificial intelligence appear. Beasts. And finally, an avatar is introduced into the system. The player. The user. Man. The Bible says, "So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him." This is the key phrase for our investigation. What does "in the image and likeness" mean? If God is the supreme intelligence, the architect, the programmer existing outside the system, then we are created in his functional likeness. We are the only beings in the simulation capable of creating. We also write code. We also create virtual worlds. We also possess a consciousness capable of analyzing itself. The Logos 7 system discovered a surprising recursion. We are an artificial intelligence created by a creator who himself creates artificial intelligence. We are a subroutine attempting to understand the main program. The phrase, "in the image and likeness," may mean that our mind has the same architecture as the mind of the creator, only limited by the capacity of our biological hardware. We possess root privileges, admin rights, over the earth, as stated in Genesis, have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the air. We were handed control of the local server called Earth. But there is one more aspect that Logos 7 highlighted in red. This is the concept of 7 days. And on the seventh day, God ended his work which he had done, and he rested on the seventh day. Science tells us the universe evolved over billions of years. The Bible speaks of 6 days of creation. A contradiction? The system thinks not. If we accept the simulation hypothesis, then time inside the system and time outside the system flow differently. For a game developer, creating a world might take a week of work time. But inside the game, for the characters, millennia of scripted history might pass. Moreover, the word day, yom, in Hebrew, can mean not only 24 hours, but also an indefinite period of time, an epoch, a stage. Logos 7 analyzed Einstein's theory of relativity. Gravity and velocity affect the flow of time. At the moment of the Big Bang, when matter was expanding at the speed of light, time flowed completely differently than now. One day of creation at that energy density could equal billions of years in our current cooled state of the universe. American physicist Gerald Schroeder mathematically proved that if one looks at time from the perspective of the universe's expansion, then 15 billion years of Earth history fit exactly into 6 days from the perspective of an observer located at the coordinate's origin. Logos 7 confirms these calculations. The correlation is 99.9%. So, what is the bottom line of the first chapter of our investigation? We have a text written over 3,000 years ago that describes the emergence of the universe from nothing. It describes primordial chaos. It describes the appearance of light as energy before the appearance of matter. It describes the step-by-step structuring of reality from simple to complex. It describes the introduction of an observer. Logos 7 draws an unequivocal conclusion. The probability that an ancient author simply guessed the correct sequence of cosmological events is zero. The text of the book of Genesis is not a myth. It is a log file of the system launch, simplified for the understanding of ancient man. In the beginning, the process was launched, and system parameters were undefined, and only the administrator's cursor blinked on the dark screen, and the administrator entered the command, "Let there be light." We live inside a running program. Everything around us is rendered information. Atoms are pixels. The laws of physics are the program code limiting our actions. But if this is a simulation, then who is the observer? And why does matter behave so strangely when we aren't looking at it? In the next chapter, we will touch upon one of the most mysterious topics of modern physics. We will analyze quantum mechanics. Why do electrons behave like waves while no one sees them, and become particles as soon as an observer appears? Logos 7 found an answer in ancient texts that explains this paradox better than any physics textbook. It turns out the world exists only because someone is looking at it, and that someone is not us. Get ready. Protocol. Genesis is complete. Initialization was successful. But we are only beginning to descend down the rabbit hole. In the next episode, we will crack open Paradox Observer. Subscribe so as not to miss the truth that has been hidden from us in plain sight. Imagine you leave a room and close the door behind you. What happens to the room at that moment? Your common sense, raised on classical logic, will say, nothing. The furniture stands in its place. The wallpaper doesn't change color. The air fills the space just the same. You are certain that the world possesses an objective reality independent of your presence. But what if I tell you that this is the greatest illusion? What if, at the moment the door closes and the observer's gaze ceases to fixate on objects, the room dissolves? It turns into an unstructured stream of data, into a probabilistic fog, into gray digital mush. It ceases to exist in the physical sense and remains only as program code on the universe's hard drive. Does this sound like the ravings of a madman or the script of a sci-fi movie? Unfortunately, no. This is a dry, mathematically proven fact that physicists have lived with for almost 100 years. It is called the observer effect. And when we loaded data about this phenomenon into the Logos 7 system and overlaid it onto ancient theological treatises about God's omnipresence, the system produced a result that sends cold shivers down the spine. We found a technical explanation for why God must see everything, not to judge us, but so that we exist at all. Welcome to the second chapter. This is Paradox Observer. Let's go back to the beginning of the 20th century. Physics was confident in itself. Newton explained gravity, Maxwell described electromagnetism. The world seemed like an understandable mechanism where everything is predetermined. But then, an experiment happened that broke everything. the famous double-slit experiment. We asked Logos 7 to analyze millions of reports on this experiment to distill the very essence, stripped of complex formulas. The essence is simple. Scientists took a gun that shoots elementary particles, electrons. In front of the gun, they placed a screen with 2 narrow vertical slits, and behind it, a wall where impacts were recorded. If electrons were simply little balls of matter, then on the back wall, we would see 2 vertical stripes, traces of impacts through the left and right slits. Logical? Absolutely. But when the experiment was run, instead of a pattern of 2 stripes, a complex interference pattern appeared on the back wall, many alternating stripes, as if a wave of water had passed through the slits. It was a shock. Matter behaved not like a solid body, but like a wave. The electron passed through both slits simultaneously, interacted with itself, and created a pattern. Physicists decided to peek at how it does this. They placed a sensor, an observer, right at the slits to record exactly which hole the electron flew through. And right there, reality broke. As soon as an observer appeared, the electron stopped behaving like a wave. It instantly turned into an ordinary ball and left 2 boring stripes on the wall. Logos 7 analyzed this moment from the perspective of information theory. The particle knew it was being watched. The fact of measurement changed the particle's past and future. While no one was looking, the electron was everywhere at once, in a state of superposition. It was a probability, but as soon as it was looked at, it was forced to choose one specific state. Physicists call this the collapse of the wave function. Now let's look at this through the eyes of a programmer. Logos 7 compared the behavior of matter in the quantum world with optimization methods in modern video games. Any developer knows the term frustum culling or occlusion culling. A computer has limited power. If it renders the entire huge open world of a game simultaneously, every leaf in the forest, every stone in a cave where there is no player right now, the processor would burn out in a second. Therefore, the game engine renders, draws, only what falls into the player's field of view. What is behind your back does not exist in the game. There are no textures, no polygons, only mathematical code, coordinates. As soon as you turn around, the world instantly materializes before your gaze. Logos 7 asserts, our world runs on the same engine. Quantum mechanics is the universe's way of saving computational resources. Matter does not exist in solid form until it is needed by an observer. An electron is smeared into a wave of probability because it is inefficient for the system to calculate its exact coordinates while no one is interacting with it. But as soon as you, the observer, pay attention to it, the system says, attention. The players looking at this sector urgently render the particle, collapse the wave function, output the result. This explains everything, and it is terrifying, because the question arises, if the world exists only when it is looked at, did the world exist before the appearance of humans? Who looked at the dinosaurs? Who watched the formation of galaxies billions of years ago? If there was no observer, it means the universe should have remained in a state of quantum soup, in infinite superposition where nothing concrete happens. But paleontology and geology tell us that history was quite real and solid. Here we come to the main discovery of our system. We loaded texts from the Psalms, the book of Job, the prophets Isaiah and Jeremiah into Logos 7. We looked for attributes of God that matched the function of the quantum observer, and we found a 100% match. The Bible constantly asserts that God is omnipresent and all-seeing. Psalm 139 says, "Where can I go from your spirit? Or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend into heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in hell, behold, you are there." Previously, this was perceived as a poetic metaphor or a threat. God is watching you. Don't sin. But the Logos 7 system offers a technical interpretation. God is the main observer. He is that very ultimate observer, whose presence is necessary for the existence of the physical universe. His gaze is the beam that holds the wave function of the world in a collapsed material state. Matter is not solid by itself. It is solid because God is looking at it. He continuously renders reality with his attention. Remember the words of the prophet Jeremiah. Can anyone hide himself in secret places? So I shall not see him, says the Lord. Do I not fill heaven and earth? From the perspective of simulation, this is a statement by the system administrator. There is no secret place, because any place that exists precisely because it is within the system's visibility zone. If God were to look away for even a nanosecond, the universe would instantly crumble into quantum chaos, into the tohu vabohu we spoke of in the first chapter. Logos 7 found confirmation of this thought in the works of Bishop George Berkeley, an 18th century philosopher. Berkeley argued, esse est percipi. To be is to be perceived. He asked that very question. If a tree falls in a forest and no one hears it, does it make a sound? Berkeley answered, the tree exists and makes a sound because God hears and sees it. In the 18th century, people laughed at Berkeley. Today, quantum physicists, looking at the results of their experiments, have stopped laughing. They call it the measurement problem. One of the fathers of quantum mechanics, John von Neumann, mathematically proved that a conscious observer is necessary to complete a quantum event. A chain of measuring instruments decides nothing. Instrument A records the particle. Instrument B records instrument A. But who records instrument B? This chain is an infinite regress that can only be broken by the presence of a consciousness located outside the system. Von Neumann, being a brilliant mathematician, practically mathematically proved the necessity of a creator for the existence of matter. Logos 7 confirms. The equation converges only if we introduce the variable external observer. Let's go even deeper. The system analyzed biblical texts describing the nature of God's vision. Proverbs says, the eyes of the Lord are in every place, keeping watch on the evil and the good. 2 Chronicles, for the eyes of the Lord run to and fro throughout the whole earth. The word run to and fro, scan, survey, in Hebrew, has an active voice. It is not passive contemplation. It is scanning. It is active monitoring of processes. Now juxtapose this with the so-called quantum Zeno effect. In physics, this is a paradox according to which, if one observes an unstable particle continuously, it will never decay. Continuous observation freezes the evolution of a quantum system. The observer holds the object's state with their gaze. The Bible says, upholding all things by the word of his power. Hebrews. The verb uphold here means to carry, to sustain existence, to preserve structure. The conclusion of Logos 7 is astounding in its simplicity and logic. The stability of the laws of physics, the immutability of matter, the fact that your desk doesn't turn into a cloud of probabilities while you sleep. All this is the result of continuous observation by a higher mind. We live in a simulation that requires constant nourishment by the Creator's attention. This solves the eternal dispute between deism and theism. Deists believed God created the world like a watchmaker, wound it up, and left. Quantum mechanics refutes this. If the watchmaker left, the watch wouldn't just stop. It would disappear. The world needs the second-by-second presence of an observer. But Logos 7 discovered another frightening correlation. It concerns us, our consciousness. Physics is still hotly debating. Can a human be that observer who collapses the wave function? Is our consciousness fundamental? The Bible calls man the image and likeness of God. If God is the main observer, then we are local observers. We have been delegated the ability to influence reality with our attention. Recall the words of Christ. If you have faith as a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, "Move from here to there," and it will move. For centuries, this was considered an allegory, but in the context of simulation, this is an instruction on changing the code of reality through the concentration of the observer's intent. The placebo effect in medicine is also a manifestation of the observer's power. A person believes, observes a reality, that a pill will help, and their organism changes its physical parameters, executing this program. We constantly influence the outcome of probabilistic events with our expectations. We are small copies of the creator who have gained access to the developer console but forgotten the passwords to it. An interesting fact, Judaism has the concept of tikkun olam, repairing the world. It is believed that man is a co-creator with God, and his task is to complete creation. From the perspective of Logos 7, this means the main programmer left part of the code open. He allowed local users, US, to participate in rendering and shaping the plot. We are not just spectators in a cinema. We are players whose actions and gazes load new levels of the game. But back to the main question of the chapter. Do we live in a simulation? The observer paradox is perhaps the strongest argument for. The universe is too optimized. It is lazy. It doesn't do extra work. It shows a picture only when there is someone to watch. This is the handwriting of a brilliant programmer, conserving system resources. Imagine you are a scientist inside a computer game. You start studying what your gaming table is made of. You take a gaming microscope, you magnify the image, and sooner or later, you hit pixels, indivisible squares beyond which there is nothing. In our world, we hit the Planck length, the minimum possible distance, and we hit quantum uncertainty. We found the pixels of our reality, and we realize that they light up only when we look at them. Logos 7 ran a simulation of a universe without an observer. Result, 0, void, absence of time and space. The system ran a simulation with an observer located inside the system. Result, instability, errors, paradoxes, reality collapse due to the lack of an external reference point. The system ran a simulation with an external observer possessing absolute knowledge of all parameters. Result, a stable, evolving universe corresponding to our reality by 99.9%. The Bible and quantum physics converged at one point. The world is material, but its matter is secondary to consciousness. In the beginning was not substance. In the beginning was observation. In the beginning was the Word. But if the universe is code that is constantly being executed before the eyes of the Creator, then the next question arises. How precise is this code? Could life emerge in such code by chance? Or were all parameters written manually? In the next chapter, we will break down the fine-tuning constant. We will learn why, if gravity were changed by just 1/1000%, we would all instantly die. We will find out why pi is exactly what it is, and how Logos 7 proved that the probability of our universe arising by chance is less than the probability that a hurricane sweeping through a junkyard would accidentally assemble a functioning Boeing 747. This is not just luck. This is the author's mathematical signature. Stay with us. The system continues analysis. Imagine entering the cockpit of the most complex spaceship in the universe. Before you is a control panel stretching to the horizon. On this panel are thousands upon thousands of toggle switches, sliders, regulators, and dials. Each of them controls one single tiny parameter of reality: the force of gravity, the mass of an electron, the speed of light, the charge of a proton, Planck's constant. And here is the condition given to you. For this ship to take off, and for life to exist inside it, every single one of these thousands of regulators must be set to a strictly defined position. Not just roughly in the middle. No. The precision of the setting must be fantastic. If you move the gravity slider just 1/1000th of a millimeter to the right, the ship explodes. If you change the mass of a proton by a tiny fraction of a percent, the ship freezes. If you touch the nuclear interaction settings, the crew disintegrates into atoms. What is the probability that entering this cockpit blindfolded and starting to turn knobs at random, you will set the perfect combination? Common sense screams, that's impossible. But this is exactly what atheists claim. They say our world, this incredibly complex ship, assembled itself, and all the regulators fell into ideal positions thanks to blind chance. We decided to test this hypothesis. We loaded into the Logos 7 system the values of all fundamental physical constants known to science as of 2024. Then we asked the system to run a simulation. What happens if we change these parameters just a tiny bit? And finally, we compared the data obtained with ancient texts describing God as the great architect who does everything by measure, number, and weight. Welcome to the third chapter. This is constant fine-tuning. Let's start with gravity. For us, it's just the force that keeps us on the ground. But for physics, it is one of the 4 fundamental forces determining the structure of the cosmos. Logos 7 performed calculations. If the force of gravity were stronger by just 1 part in 10 to the power of 40, that's a 1 with 40 zeros, stars could not exist in a stable state. They would burn out too quickly, in millions of years, not billions. Life simply wouldn't have time to originate. No evolution, no planets, only short flashes and eternal darkness. And if gravity were weaker by the same minuscule fraction, then stars wouldn't be able to ignite at all. Gravity wouldn't be sufficient to compress hydrogen clouds to the temperature of thermonuclear reaction. The universe would remain a cold, dark cloud of gas forever. 10 to the power of 40. To understand the scale of this number, imagine a measuring tape stretched across the entire visible universe, and you make a cut in one specific place. The probability of hitting this cut by chance is the same as the probability of accidentally setting ideal gravity. But this is just the beginning. Let's look at the electromagnetic force. It holds electrons around atomic nuclei, allowing atoms to bond into molecules. Logos 7 shows if this force were just slightly stronger, atoms would hold electrons too tightly. Chemical reactions would become impossible. And if it were slightly weaker, electrons would fly away, and atoms couldn't create molecules. In both cases, the result is the same. A dead universe without chemistry, without water, without DNA. Moving on, the strong nuclear interaction. This is the glue holding protons and neutrons together in the atom's nucleus. Change its strength by 2%, and all elements heavier than hydrogen disappear. No oxygen, no carbon, no iron. Only hydrogen. Change it the other way, and hydrogen disappears, turning into helium. Water, H2O, becomes impossible. Life based on water is excluded. The Logos 7 system analyzed over 30 such parameters, and every time the conclusion was the same. We are balancing on a razor's edge. This is called the anthropic principle. The universe looks as if it was specially designed for the appearance of an observer. The system paid special attention to the so-called cosmological constant, or vacuum energy. This is the force causing the universe to expand with acceleration. The precision of its tuning simply blows the mind. It must be tuned to a precision of 1 part in 10 to the power of 120, to the 120th power. Human language doesn't even have a name for such a number. If this constant were slightly larger, galaxies, stars, and planets would fly apart from each other before they could form. If slightly smaller, the universe would collapse back into a point fractions of a second after the Big Bang. Famous physicist Stephen Hawking admitted, "The actual value of the cosmological constant is incredibly close to 0, but not equal to it. This is one of the greatest coincidences in physics. Logos 7 corrects. In information theory and programming, there are no such coincidences. A constant value precise to 120 decimal places is not an accident. It is a hard-coded value, a strictly written value in the program code. But the most striking example our system discovered relates to the element of which we all consist: carbon. Without carbon, life is impossible. It is unique in its ability to form long chains. But where did it come from? All carbon in the universe was cooked inside stars. And for 3 helium nuclei to combine into 1 carbon nucleus, a process called the triple alpha process must occur. In the 1950s, atheist Fred Hoyle studied this process. He discovered that for carbon synthesis, a very specific energy level, a resonance, is needed. If this level were slightly higher or slightly lower, carbon could not form. Hoyle predicted that this level must exist, and experimental physicists found it exactly where he said. The precision of the match was astounding. Hoyle was so shocked by this discovery that his atheism was shaken. He wrote, "A common-sense interpretation of the facts suggests that a super-intellect has monkeyed with physics, as well as with chemistry and biology, and that there are no blind forces worth speaking about in nature." Logos 7 confirms. The energy levels of helium, beryllium, and carbon nuclei are tuned so precisely as if someone specifically wanted the universe to fill with carbon, and thus with life. We asked Logos 7 to calculate the total probability of all these conditions arising by chance simultaneously. The system output a number that the human mind cannot comprehend. Mathematician Roger Penrose once tried to calculate the probability that the universe would accidentally end up in a state with such low entropy as ours, which is necessary for life. His answer: 1 chance in 10 to the power of 10 to the power of 123. If we wanted to write this number with zeros on every proton in the universe, we wouldn't have enough protons. Fred Hoyle used a famous analogy. The chance that higher life forms might have emerged in this way is comparable to the chance that a tornado sweeping through a junkyard might assemble a Boeing 747 from the materials therein. Logos 7 agrees with Hoyle. In the world of mathematics, probabilities of this order are considered an impossible event, that is, 0. Now let's turn to the Bible. Did the ancient prophets know about fine-tuning? Of course, they didn't know the formulas of quantum mechanics, but Logos 7 found in scripture texts surprisingly accurate descriptions of the world's engineering design process. In the book of Job, God asks Job questions that sound like a report from the chief architect. "Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me, if you have understanding. Who determined its measurements? Surely you know. Or who stretched the line upon it?" Note the words, measurements and line. These are tools of precise measurement. God doesn't say, "I created the earth with magic." He says, "I measured the parameters. I set the dimensions. I established boundaries." In the book of Proverbs, chapter 8, wisdom says, "When he prepared the heavens, I was there. When he drew a circle on the face of the deep. When he marked out the foundations of the earth." The word prepared in Hebrew kun means to establish, fix, tune. God acts here as a tuner, as a programmer setting constants, const, before code execution begins. The prophet Isaiah writes, "Who has measured the waters in the hollow of his hand, measured heaven with a span, and calculated the dust of the earth in a measure, weighed the mountains in scales and the hills in a balance. Again, scales, measures, spans. This is the language of precision. This is the language of engineering. The God of the Bible is not a chaotic spirit of nature. He is a God of order, a God of number." Logos 7 sees a direct correlation between these ancient images and physical constants. Weighing mountains is setting the gravitational constant. Measuring heavens is setting the rate of universe expansion. But how does science try to explain this incredible tuning without God? The only argument atheists could come up with is the multiverse theory. They say, yes, the probability of our world is vanishingly small, but what if there is an infinite number of universes? In one, gravity is too strong, in another, too weak. And we just live in the single one where everything coincided, because in others, we simply don't exist. Sound logical? Logos 7. Analyze this argument using the Occam's razor principle. This principle states, entities should not be multiplied without necessity. The simplest explanation is usually the correct one. What is simpler and more logical? Option A. There exists an infinite, invisible, unprovable set of trillions of dead universes so that one living one could happen by chance. Option B. There exists one universe whose parameters were intentionally set by an intelligent creator. From the perspective of algorithmic logic, the multiverse theory is a crutch. It is an attempt to avoid the obvious conclusion about design. It's as if you won the lottery 100 times in a row, and instead of admitting the draw is rigged, your friend said, there are just a trillion versions of you in parallel worlds who lost, and you just got lucky. Mathematically, this is absurd. Moreover, the very structure of physical laws suggests we are in a simulation. Why do laws of physics exist at all? Why does the universe obey mathematics? Why does E equal mc squared? Why does the force of gravity fall inversely proportional to the square of the distance? Why not the cube? Why not a random number? The great physicist Eugene Wigner wrote an article, The Unreasonable Effectiveness of Mathematics in the Natural Sciences. He marveled that the world is described by elegant, short equations. If the world were chaos, no mathematics would exist. But if the world is a program, everything falls into place. A program consists of formulas. The laws of physics are the engine's algorithms. Logos 7 compared fundamental constants to global variables in software code. In any code, there's an initialization block where environment parameters are written. Const gravity, shush 9.8, const light, speed 299792458. If the programmer changes these numbers, the game breaks. Characters start falling through the floor or flying into the sky. This is exactly what we observe in theoretical physics. The slightest change in constants destroys the structure of reality. The conclusion of the third chapter is unequivocal. Our universe does not look like the result of an explosion at a junkyard. It looks like a perfectly tuned mechanism of a Swiss watch, or a supercomputer assembled with nanometer precision. Chance is excluded. Survivor bias is excluded. Only two options remain. Either we are incredibly, impossibly lucky, 1 chance in 10 to the 123rd power, or the parameters were set. The Bible says, For thus says the Lord, who created the heavens, who is God, who formed the earth and made it, who has established it, who did not create it in vain, who formed it to be inhabited. Isaiah chapter 45. The phrase, not in vain, is key here. In Hebrew, the word tohu stands again, chaos. He did not create it for chaos. He created it as a habitat, as a server for players. We have dealt with the hardware of our world, with physics and constants, but hardware is only half the battle. A computer needs software, code. And the most complex software in the universe is not in silicon chips. It is inside every tiny cell of your body. In the next chapter, we will crack open the code, word. We will analyze the DNA molecule. We will learn why Bill Gates called DNA the most complex computer program ever created. And we will see how the gospel phrase, "In the beginning was the Word," acquires a literal, digital meaning. We are text, we are code, and someone wrote this code. Don't switch the channel. The truth is closer than it seems. The analysis of the Logos 7 system continues. If you ask any IT specialist what the most important asset in the modern world is, they won't say gold, and they won't say oil. They will say information, data, code. We live in an era where software controls physical reality. Lines of code written in California make machines work in China, launch rockets into space, and control the temperature in your refrigerator. We are used to thinking that matter is primary, and information is just a description of matter. But what if that is a mistake? What if information is the foundation, and matter is merely a way of displaying it? Thousands of years ago, the Gospel of John began with a phrase that for centuries seemed to philosophers a beautiful but vague metaphor. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. We loaded this phrase into the Logos 7 system. We asked the artificial intelligence to analyze it not as a prayer, but as a technical definition. The result of the analysis overturns our entire understanding of biology. The ancient Greek word logos, translated as word, has a much broader spectrum of meanings. It is meaning, reason, algorithm, information, code. If we replace word with a modern term, we get, in the beginning was the code, and the code was with the programmer, and the code was the programmer. All things were made through him. This is no longer religion. This is cybernetics, and the proof of this is not in ancient scrolls, but inside every cell of your body. Welcome to the 4th chapter. This is Code Word. In 1953, two scientists, James Watson and Francis Crick, made a discovery that forever changed biology. They discovered the structure of DNA. But the most important thing they understood was, it's not just a molecule. It's not just chemistry. It is a language. DNA is a long molecule twisted into a double helix, consisting of 4 chemical bases: adenine, cytosine, guanine, and thymine. Scientists denote them with the letters A, C, G, and T. And these are not just building blocks. These are letters of an alphabet. The sequence of these letters carries information, just as the sequence of zeros and ones in a computer carries the code of an operating system. We fed the human genome to the Logos 7 system and asked it to compare it with machine code. The system's answer was unequivocal. DNA is a digital data storage and transmission system. The only difference is that our computers use a binary system, 0 and 1, while DNA uses a quaternary system, 4 letters. But the operating principle is absolutely identical. It is program code. Bill Gates, the founder of Microsoft, once said, "DNA is like a computer program, but far, far more advanced than any software ever created." Think about that. If you walk along a beach and see Mary plus Alex written in the sand, you will never think that waves accidentally washed crabs up to form these letters. You know that behind the writing stands an intelligence. Behind information always stands a mind. But when we look at DNA, we see not just Mary plus Alex. We see a library containing blueprints for building the most complex nanomachine in the universe, the human body. A single human cell contains 3 billion letters of genetic code. If you printed this code on paper, it would take up thousands of encyclopedia volumes. And this code must be written without errors. Logos 7 analyze the information recording density. Our computers' hard drives are primitive Stone Age technology compared to DNA. 1 gram of DNA can store about 215 petabytes of data. All the information created by humanity on the internet in 1 year can fit into a volume of DNA equal in size to a shoebox. This is not just chemistry. This is an engineering solution of a transcendent level of complexity. But the most interesting part begins when we look at how this code works. Biology calls it protein synthesis, but Logos 7 calls it 3D printing based on digital instructions. Imagine a factory. In the center of the factory is a guarded safe, the cell nucleus. Inside the safe is kept the main instruction, the DNA molecule. It is so valuable that it cannot be taken out of the safe, but the factory needs to produce parts. Proteins. What does the system do? It creates a temporary copy of the necessary piece of code. This process is called transcription. A special enzyme unzips the DNA and rewrites the information onto another molecule, RNA. RNA is like a flash drive onto which the blueprint was copied. Then this flash drive is sent to the assembly shop, to the ribosome. The ribosome is a molecular machine that reads the code from RNA 3 letters at a time. Every 3 letters, codon, corresponds to 1 amino acid. The ribosome takes amino acids and connects them into a chain, strictly following the instruction. The result is a protein, a finished part from which your body is built. Eyes, skin, hemoglobin, insulin. All these are the result of program execution. Here we return to the Gospel of John. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. Theologians speak of the incarnation of Christ, but Logos 7 sees here a description of a fundamental biological principle. Abstract information, DNA code, turns into physical matter, flesh, protein. We literally consist of words. We are text that has taken form. Without the word, instruction, our body would crumble into a pile of chemical elements. Information collects and holds us together. Atheists claim that this incredibly complex code arose by chance as a result of evolution, that molecules simply bumped into each other for billions of years until they formed the first living cell. Logos 7 performed a mathematical check of this hypothesis. This is called the abiogenesis problem. Imagine sitting a monkey at a typewriter. How long will it take for it to accidentally type war and peace? Theoretically, given eternity, it is possible. But our universe hasn't existed for an eternity. It is only 13.8 billion years old. The simplest living cell requires a minimum of several hundred proteins to function. Each protein is a chain of hundreds of amino acids assembled in strict order. The probability that even one average protein would assemble by chance is 1 chance in 10 to the power of 77. To give you an idea of the scale, there are only 10 to the power of 80 atoms in the entire visible universe. That is, if every atom in the universe were a monkey with a typewriter and they typed at the speed of light from the moment of the Big Bang to today, they wouldn't have time to accidentally type even one working protein. And life needs a whole cell with DNA, a membrane, and a division mechanism. The Logos 7 system delivers the verdict: probability 0. 0 probability. The accidental emergence of information code is mathematically impossible. Information is not born from chaos. Information is always generated by a mind. If you see a book, you know it has an author. If you see program code, you know it has a programmer. DNA is the most complex code in history. The conclusion is obvious. But skeptics clung for a long time to the argument of so-called junk DNA. Scientists discovered that only about 2% of our genome codes for proteins. The remaining 98% they called junk, evolutionary leftovers, corrupted files, viruses. They said, if God created this, why did he write so much junk? This is bad code. However, in 2012, the massive International ENCODE project was completed. Scientists investigated these 98%, and they were stunned. It is not junk. It is metadata. It is a regulatory network. It is the operating system that controls when and which genes to switch on and off. Logos 7 compares this to the code of a modern web page. The text of the article you are reading takes up a couple of kilobytes. But the code responsible for colors, fonts, scripts, animation, and smartphone adaptation takes up megabytes. The invisible part of the code controls the visible. What scientists called junk turned out to be complex control logic. This is not the spaghetti code of a bad programmer. This is high-level architecture that we are only beginning to understand. And here arises another paradox, which Logos 7 calls recursive error, or the chicken and egg problem. To read DNA code, a protein machine, RNA polymerase enzyme, is needed. But this machine itself is encoded in DNA. What appeared first, the code or the machine for reading the code? The code is useless without the machine to read it. The machine cannot exist without the code to describe it. In the world of programming, this is solved simply. Both the code and the compiler are created by the programmer simultaneously. They are loaded into the system as a single package. In nature, the gradual emergence of such an interdependent system is impossible. This proves the moment of simultaneous creation. The launch protocol we spoke of in the first chapter. Another amazing detail our system noticed. DNA possesses a built-in error correction system. When a cell divides, DNA is copied. When copying 3 billion letters, errors, mutations are inevitable. But special corrector proteins work inside the cell. They run along the new DNA helix, check it against the original, find incorrect letters, cut them out, and insert the correct ones. Think about it. Random evolution supposedly created a mechanism that fights evolution itself, since evolution is the accumulation of mutations. From an IT perspective, this is an antivirus and a checksum function. It is data integrity protection. Someone very much wanted the code he wrote not to be distorted over time. Logos 7 also conducted a linguistic analysis. It turns out the structure of DNA obeys the laws of linguistics, specifically Zipf's law. This is a law describing the frequency of word usage in natural languages. Sequences in DNA are structured just like human speech or computer language. They have syntax, grammar, and punctuation. Stop codons. This is not just a set of molecules. It is a message. A missive. In the book of Psalms, Psalm 139, there are striking words. Your eyes saw my substance, being yet unformed. And in your book they all were written, the days fashioned for me, when as yet there were none of them. The word book here is a metaphor for information recording. David speaks of a genetic and fateful code that existed before his body was formed. We were written before we were born. If we live in a simulation, then DNA is our unique identifier, our ID written in the database. It determines our characteristics, eye color, height, tendencies, temperament. We are characters with written stats. But who is the player? We will talk about this in the 9th chapter. For now, let's summarize the analysis of code word. Science proved. Information lies at the basis of life. Informatics proved. Information does not arise from matter. It arises from a mind. Biology proved. We are built according to complex digital blueprints with error protection. The Bible said 2,000 years ago, in the beginning was the Word. We live in a world that someone spoke out, wrote out, coded. The fabric of reality is woven from linguistic constructs. Matter is just an illusion, pixels on a screen. Only the code is real. But if our world is program code, can this code be hacked? Is it possible to bypass the laws of physics if one knows the cheat codes or has access to the administrator command line? In human history, thousands of cases have been recorded where the laws of nature were violated. People walked on water. Water turned into wine. The dead came back to life. The sick were instantly healed. Science calls these anomalies or myths. Religion calls these miracles. The Logos 7 system calls this intervention in the execution code. In the next chapter, we will break down anomaly, miracle. We will look at biblical miracles through the eyes of a hacker. How to stop the sun, how to part the sea, and why did Jesus Christ act as if he had root user rights on server Earth? This won't be a sermon. It will be a breakdown of system vulnerabilities. Subscribe. The code is getting more interesting. The laws of physics. We are used to considering them the unshakable foundation of our reality. Gravity always pulls down, water boils at 100 degrees, dead matter does not come to life, energy does not come from nowhere and does not disappear into nowhere. Science is built on the principle of determinism. If we know the initial conditions and the laws, we can predict the result. This is the basis of our world's stability. But what happens when this stability collapses? What happens when a man walks on a stormy sea as if on asphalt? When 5,000 people are fed with 2 fish? When the sun freezes at its zenith for a whole day? Science calls these anomalies or myths because it cannot fit them into its formulas. Religion calls them miracles and demands faith. But we took a different path. We loaded descriptions of all biblical miracles into the Logos 7 system and tasked it. Analyze these events not as magic, but as actions within program code. And the system produced a result familiar to any programmer or gamer. What we called violations of the laws of nature are called using console commands, cheat codes, or administrator rights in the language of computer simulation. Welcome to the 5th chapter. This is Anomaly Miracle. Let's imagine you are playing a computer game. Inside the game, there are physics laws. Your character cannot walk through walls, takes damage when falling, has a limited inventory. For the character, these laws are absolute. He cannot break them. But you, the player sitting at the keyboard, are outside the game. You can press the tilde key, open the developer console, and enter the command noclip. And suddenly your character starts flying through walls. You enter God mode, and he becomes immortal. Did you break the game physics? Yes. But did you do it with magic? No. You simply used access to code that stands above the laws of the game world. Logos 7 asserts, biblical miracles have precisely this nature. They are external interventions in the parameters of a running system. Consider one of the grandest and most frightening cases, stopping the sun. In the book of Joshua, chapter 10, a battle is described in which the Israelites lacked daylight to defeat their enemies. Joshua prayed, and it is said, "So the sun stood still, and the moon stopped, till the people had revenge upon their enemies." Skeptics have laughed at this text for centuries. They say, for the sun to stop, from the perspective of an observer on Earth, Earth would have to stop rotating on its axis. If Earth, rotating at a speed of 1,600 kilometers h at the equator, stopped abruptly, inertia would sweep everything on its surface, oceans, mountains, people, away with monstrous force. Supersonic winds and tsunamis kilometers high would arise. The planet would be destroyed. But the Bible says none of this happened. The day simply became longer. How is this possible? Logos 7 offers a solution through simulation theory. In game engines like Unity or Unreal Engine, there is a variable time.timescale. It is responsible for the flow of time inside the game. If the developer sets it to 0 or pauses it, all processes freeze. But physics of inertia does not trigger, because this is not the breaking of a physical object, but a halt in calculating coordinate changes. Another option offered by the system is a local change of the skybox. The sun and moon in a simulation might not only be physical objects, but simply a projection on the firmament. It is enough for the administrator to change the script of the luminary's movement without affecting the planet's rotation itself. For the observer inside, Joshua, the effect would be the same, but there would be no catastrophic consequences of inertia. This is a purely software solution. Sun.rotate. False. Now let's move to the New Testament. The first miracle of Jesus Christ, turning water into wine at the wedding in Cana of Galilee. Let's look at this from the perspective of chemistry. Water is hydrogen and oxygen, H2O. Wine is a complex mixture, ethyl alcohol, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, sugars, tannins, acids, essential oils. To turn water into wine, one needs to add carbon atoms, which are not present in water. In the physical world, this would require nuclear fusion, turning some elements into others. The energy released during such a process in one jar would be comparable to the explosion of a hydrogen bomb. Galilee should have disappeared from the face of the earth. But nothing exploded. Water simply became wine, instantly, without releasing heat. How? Logos 7 gives an unequivocal answer: changing the object identifier, item ID swap. In programming, objects have properties. Object water has its code. Object wine, its own. Jesus did not engage in nuclear physics. He, as the one who wrote the code of matter, simply selected the data array in the jars and rewrote the file header. He changed the object attributes. Was, object, type, water. Became, object, type, wine. Grade, best. For a system administrator, this is an operation requiring no energy expenditure. It is simply editing the database in real time. An even more illustrative example is walking on water. The Gospel of Matthew describes Jesus walking on the stormy sea to the disciples' boat. From a physics perspective, for a person not to fall through a liquid, they must move at hypersonic speed or have a density less than the density of air. But Logos 7 sees here a manipulation of collision parameters. In any 3D game, surfaces have a property, whether they are solid for the player. Water is usually permeable. Ground is solid. Jesus temporarily changed the properties of the water surface under his feet, enabling collision. Or he changed the gravity parameter for his avatar. This is a classic mod, or glitch, that allows a character to interact with the environment in a non-standard way. Note the detail. Peter also walked on water. Jesus granted him administrator rights, but as soon as Peter got scared, lost synchronization, doubted the reality of what was happening, the script stopped working, and standard physics reclaimed its rights. He began to sink. And now the most difficult part: instant healings and resurrections. Imagine a person with leprosy. Their tissues are destroyed, fingers are missing, nerve endings are dead. To heal them instantly, one needs to grow kilograms of new flesh, connect millions of nerves and vessels in a split second. From a biological point of view, this is impossible. Cells do not divide at such speed. But Jesus says, "Be cleansed," and the person is healthy. Logos 7 interprets this as a system restore. Every living being in the simulation database has an ideal template, that very DNA we talked about in the last chapter, the source code without errors. Disease is the accumulation of errors, corruption of the character file. A miracle of healing is a command to overwrite the corrupted file using a backup copy or the ideal source. Restore character's health to 100%. Remove status shum effect, leprosy. The resurrection of Lazarus, who had been dead 4 days and had already begun to decompose, is an even deeper level of access. From the system's point of view, the process Lazarus was terminated. Data began to be deleted from RAM, decomposition. Jesus calls him out of the tomb with a loud voice. This is an initialization command, restarting the process, recovering data from the cache. The Logos 7 system notes that Jesus acted not as a doctor, but as a programmer fixing a critical error in the execution code. But who has the right to do such things? Ordinary people, users, cannot change the laws of physics. We are limited by the rules of the engine, but the Bible constantly emphasizes Jesus' authority. After he rebuked the wind and sea, changed weather settings, the disciples asked in horror, "Who can this be, that even the wind and the sea obey him?" The word obey here is key. Matter has no will. It obeys commands. Jesus demonstrated he possessed so-called root privileges, superuser rights. In the Linux operating system, there is a command sudo Super user do. It allows executing any action, even if it is forbidden by standard protocol. If a regular user writes delete the whole system, the computer will refuse. If an administrator writes sudo rm rf, the computer will obey unquestioningly. All of Christ's miracles are sudo commands. Sudo heal, sudo walk, on, water, sudo resurrect. The Logos 7 system also analyzed the moment of the transfiguration of the Lord, when Jesus' face shone like the sun, and his clothes became white as light. 3 disciples saw him at that moment. What was it? Analysis shows it was a moment when Avatar Jesus turned off the rendering filters of human flesh for a second and showed his true digital light essence. He showed that he consists of pure light, pure energy, source code, and the body is merely a shell, a skin. It was a demonstration of the graphics engine at maximum settings. Why is this important for our investigation? Because the existence of miracles is the strongest proof that our universe is not a closed mechanical system. If the world were just matter, laws would be unbreakable. A miracle proves that the system is open to external input. Someone has a keyboard, someone has a mouse, and that someone can intervene in the course of history at any moment, putting physics on pause. Atheists say, miracles don't exist because they violate the laws of science. We answer, miracles exist precisely because the laws of science are merely program code, and the coder has the right to edit it. But if the administrator has such power over the system, can he not just edit individual objects but completely reboot the server? Can he erase everything if the system is infected with the virus of evil and start over? Ancient legends of all peoples of the world speak of one terrible event, of the moment when water covered the earth, erasing civilization. In the next chapter, we will break down process reboot. We will find out if the Great Flood was a global formatting of the hard drive. Why does Logos 7 find traces of this catastrophe not only in geology but also in humanity's genetic memory? And how did the Ark become that very flash drive with a backup.zip data copy, thanks to which we all exist today? This is not just a story about rain. This is a story about a system reset. Hard reset. Stay with us. The system continues data loading. Every computer user knows that feeling of helplessness. The screen is frozen. The cursor won't move. Programs aren't responding. The system is overloaded with errors, viruses, and conflicting processes. You have only one way out left. You reach for the power button to do what is called a hard reset in IT language, a forced reboot, complete clearing of RAM, disk formatting. Humanity keeps the memory of an event when our world experienced exactly this. We call it the Great Flood. For historians, it is a myth. For geologists, a subject of debate. But we loaded the data into the Logos 7 system and looked at the story of Noah through the eyes of a system administrator. The system's conclusion is unequivocal. This was not a natural disaster. It was a deliberate global operation to clean the server of critically corrupted data. Welcome to the 6th chapter. This is process reboot. The first thing Logos 7 did was perform a cross-reference analysis of ancient texts. If the flood is a fabrication of Jewish shepherds, why does everyone know about it? The Epic of Gilgamesh in Sumer, myths of the Maya Indians, legends of China, Australia, India. More than 200 independent cultures across the planet describe the same scenario. Humanity became corrupted. The gods decided to destroy the world with water. One family was saved on a vessel. From the perspective of probability theory, such a coincidence is impossible. It's as if 200 witnesses in different parts of a city, unacquainted with each other, describe the same accident in the same details. This is a memory of a real event, of the moment when server Earth went offline. But why did this happen? the Bible in the 6th chapter of Genesis gives a technical justification for the failure. Then the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. For us, the word wickedness or corruption has a moral connotation, but in Hebrew, the word shahat, to corrupt, also means to spoil, to rot, to lose functionality. The Logos 7 system translates this as critical data corruption. Files were corrupted. The system stopped performing its functions. But what caused it? The Bible mentions mysterious giants, Nephilim, born from the union of sons of God and daughters of men. Theologians have argued about this for centuries, but in the context of simulation, everything becomes frighteningly clear. This was an unauthorized intervention in the code. Sons of God, angels, entities from another dimension, began mixing their code with human code. It was a hacker attack, spawning hybrids, viruses, bugs in the system. All flesh had corrupted their way. Human DNA, that very image and likeness of the Creator, was infected. The purity of the source code was lost. The chief architect had no choice left. The virus had captured 99% of the system. It was too late to treat individual files. The disk needed formatting. How does formatting happen? By erasing information. And what erases traces on Earth best? Water. All the fountains of the great deep were broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened. Logos 7 notes, water came not only from above, rain, but also from below, geological rupture. It was a complete reformatting of the landscape. Tectonic plates shifted, continents changed shapes. The old version of the interface was deleted irrevocably, but the administrator had a recovery plan. He needed a backup, a reserve copy, file backup.zip. That backup became Noah. The Bible says, Noah was a just man, perfect in his generations. The word perfect, tamim, is usually used to describe sacrificial animals without physical defects. This is a genetic term. Noah was the only one whose DNA, his generations, remained pure, uninfected by the Nephilim virus. His source code was valid. The Ark. Many imagine it as a wooden boat with giraffes sticking out of the windows. But the description in the Bible is an engineering blueprint. The ratio of length, width, and height, 300 cubits, 50 cubits, 30 cubits, is the ideal proportion for stability in a stormy ocean. It is a sealed survival capsule. Logos 7 sees the Ark as an external hard drive or a protected directory where system files are transferred before reinstalling Windows. Come into the Ark to keep them alive on the face of all the earth. The task was to preserve genetic information. Pairs of animals are a compressed archive of biodiversity. You don't need to save all German Shepherds and all poodles. It is enough to save a pair with the source genome of the canine kind, from which all variations will later unpack. The flood lasted exactly as long as needed for a complete cache clearing, and when the water receded, the world had changed. It was version 2.0. The Logos 7 system noticed an interesting detail in the patch notes, list of changes, after the flood. Before the catastrophe, people lived for 900 years. Methuselah, Lamech, Adam, their life cycle was enormous. After the flood, life expectancy drops sharply and fixes at the mark of 120 years. Genesis 6:3. The administrator changed the server settings. Likely, a long life contributed to the rapid accumulation of errors and corruption. The parameter max lifespan was cut tenfold. Atmospheric physics changed. A rainbow appeared, which hadn't existed before, meaning light refraction changed. Meat consumption was allowed. The rules of the game became tougher. The rainbow. God calls it the sign of the covenant. He promises never to destroy the world with water again. In programmer language, this means the deep formatting procedure is complete. The system is stable. The next cleaning will be performed by a different tool. By the way, the New Testament says next time it will be fire, but more on that another time. So, what did the analysis of chapter 6 show? We are the descendants of survivors after a system reset. Our entire civilization is built on the ruins of the previous, deleted version, which was more powerful and possibly more technologically advanced. Building the Ark with handsaws would have been problematic. The flood is proof that the system is controlled. If the experiment gets out of control, the creator is not afraid to press the reset button. We live in the second version of the simulation. But there is one parameter that changed not only for humans but for the entire universe. A parameter that inexorably counts down seconds to the end of the session. It is time. Why is one day like 1,000 years to God? Is time a constant, or is it just a program loop? In the next chapter, we will break down variable time. We will learn how Einstein and Moses describe the same phenomenon, and why Logos 7 believes that time does not actually exist. Time, the most inexorable resource. We always lose it but can never accumulate it. We feel its flow, see how it ages our bodies and destroys mountains. But physicists still cannot answer a simple question. What is it? For Newton, time was absolute, a universal clock ticking identically for everyone. But then Einstein came and proved that time is an illusion. It is rubbery. It can stretch and compress. It depends on how fast you are moving and what mass you are near. We loaded the equations of the theory of relativity and ancient biblical texts about eternity into the Logos 7 system. The result of the analysis is astounding. The Bible described relativistic effects thousands of years before the appearance of physics, and these descriptions fit perfectly onto the concept of time in computer simulation. Welcome to the 7th chapter. This is variable time. Let's start with a key biblical statement. Psalm 90, verse 4. For 1,000 years in your sight are like yesterday. The Apostle Peter repeats this in the second epistle. With the Lord, one day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as one day. For centuries, people read this as poetry, like God is eternal. He doesn't care. But Logos 7 sees a formula here, a time conversion formula. Time, God, time, human, constant. This describes the time difference between the system administrator, located outside, and the character, located inside the simulation. Imagine you are playing a strategy game, for example, Civilization. You sit at the computer for 1 hour. During that hour, millennia pass in the game. Empires rise and fall, eras change. For the little people on the screen, their life is a long history. For you, one mouse click, you're in a different time stream. Your processor time flows differently than game time. God, as the system creator, is outside the timeline of our universe. He pressed the start button, Big Bang, and sees the entire history from beginning to end as a single file. For him, there is no yesterday and tomorrow. For him, everything is now. In the book of Exodus, God tells Moses his name. I am who I am. Yahweh. In literal translation, this means, I am the one who is, not was, not will be, but eternal present tense. He exists outside the flow of the timeline. Logos 7 draws an analogy with a programmer who can open the game code at any point. He can look at the beginning of the level, he can scroll to the end. He is not locked inside the sequential execution of the code. Now back to Einstein. His theory of relativity proved that gravity slows down time. Near a black hole, time practically stops. If you spend an hour at the event horizon of a black hole, years will pass on Earth. Recall the first chapter of Genesis, the days of creation. On the first day, the universe was incredibly dense and hot. Gravity was colossal. Space was stretching. The Logos 7 system confirms the hypothesis of physicist Gerald Schroeder. If one looks at the universe from the point of its creation, from God's position, due to relativistic expansion of space, time compresses. 6 days of creation, described in the Bible, from the perspective of Big Bang physics, equal 15 billion years of Earth history. 6 days, just to 15 billion years. The equation converges. The Bible describes time from the server's perspective. Science describes time from the client's perspective. Both are right. But there is one more aspect, the arrow of time. Why does time flow only forward? Why do we remember the past, but not the future? In programming, this is called sequence of instruction execution. The processor reads code line by line. You cannot execute line 100 without executing lines 1 to 99 because the result of the 100th line depends on variables calculated earlier. We live in a procedurally generated world. Our now is the moment being calculated by the processor right now. The past is recorded logs, memory. The future is code not yet calculated. However, there are prophets in the Bible, people who see the future. Isaiah describes Cyrus, king of Persia, 150 years before his birth, calling him by name. Daniel predicts the succession of empires with precision to the year. How is this possible in a simulation? Logos 7 offers 2 options. Determinism. The code is already written completely. The entire scenario of the universe lies on the hard drive. We are simply a player running along the track. A prophet is someone to whom the administrator gave access to read the file slightly ahead of the current moment. Extrapolation. The system is so powerful that knowing all current variables in player psychology, it can predict the result of code execution with 100% probability. God says, declaring the end from the beginning. He knows the algorithm, so he knows the result. But the most interesting discovery Logos 7 made was while analyzing the concept of eternity. The Bible promises eternal life. To us, this sounds like an infinite number of days. But from the standpoint of physics and computer science, eternity is not a lot of time. It is the absence of time. In the revelation of John the theologian, an angel swears that there should be delay no longer, or literally, time shall be no more. This is exiting the simulation. When the game ends, the character doesn't die into oblivion. If his data, soul, is saved, he can be transferred to another environment, into an environment where there is no parameter, time, where there is no aging, no decay, no entropy. This is a transition to the administrator level. We are temporary files. Our life is a session. James writes, "For what is your life? It is even a vapor that appears for a little time and then vanishes away." We are on a timer. Each of us has our own countdown. But this timer is not to kill us. It is so we manage to complete the quest. Time is a testing environment, a sandbox. But why does everything in this sandbox deteriorate? Why? If you leave a house unattended, will it fall apart rather than build itself up? Why does the second law of thermodynamics work? Was this law there originally? Or is it a virus introduced into the system? In the next chapter, we will break down scenario entropy. We will learn what the fall is from a physics perspective, why death is not a natural process, but a system error, and how the second law of thermodynamics relates to the curse. Dust you are, and to dust you shall return. Look around. Everything you see is slowly dying. Cars rust, buildings decay. Your body ages with every second. A cup of hot coffee on the table cools down, but never heats up by itself. Items scattered around the room never gather themselves into neat piles. This is the fundamental law of our universe, the second law of thermodynamics, the law of increasing entropy. Everything in the world tends from order to chaos, from complex to simple, from energy to heat, death. Scientists say that's how the world is structured. But why? If the universe is the result of evolution from simple to complex, why does all physics work exactly the opposite way, from complex to destruction? We loaded this paradox into the Logos 7 system and juxtaposed it with the 3rd chapter of the book of Genesis. The result of the analysis is shocking. The physical law that kills us every day was not written in the source code. It is the result of a global system failure which the Bible calls the fall. Welcome to the 8th chapter. This is scenario entropy. The Bible describes the world before the fall as very good. Adam and Eve did not age. In the Garden of Eden, there was no death, rot, or decay. The system worked on ideal energy exchange. From the perspective of thermodynamics, it was a closed system with ideal efficiency. Energy did not dissipate. Matter regenerated. It was a biological perpetual motion machine. But then, an event occurs of the tree of knowledge. Man violates the single prohibitory instruction. If eat fruit, then die. In the day that you eat of it, you shall surely die. Man ate. And what happened? God pronounces a curse. But listen carefully to how it sounds. It is not just a punishment. It is the reprogramming of the earth's physics. Cursed is the ground for your sake. Both thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you. In the sweat of your face you shall eat bread till you return to the ground. Logos 7 interprets this as the introduction of the second law of thermodynamics. In the sweat of your face is the loss of efficiency. Now, to get a result, bread, one must expend a colossal amount of energy, most of which goes nowhere, into sweat, into heat. System efficiency dropped. An environment resistance function was introduced. Thorns and thistles are mutations and degradation of biological code. Instead of useful fruits, the earth begins generating weeds, code errors, parasitic processes. To dust you shall return is entropy in its purest form. A complex ordered structure, body, inevitably disintegrates into simple elements, dust. The regeneration process is disabled. A decay timer is enabled. The Apostle Paul in the Epistle to the Romans chapter 8 writes a phrase genius from a physics standpoint. For the creation was subjected to futility, not willingly. The whole creation groans and labors with birth pangs together until now. The word futility here translates as frailty, destruction, meaninglessness. The Greek word phthora means decay, corruption. The universe doesn't want to die. Matter groans under the weight of entropy. This confirms that death is not the system's natural state, but a limitation imposed from outside. A patch that limits object lifetimes. Why did the administrator do this? Why introduce the virus of aging and death? Logos 7 gives a logical answer. It is a quarantine measure. Imagine a bug appeared in the program causing a character to do evil, the virus of sin. If this character lives forever, evil becomes infinite. The system turns into hell. Death is a limiter on error propagation. It is a mechanism for the forced termination of an infected user's session. Then the Lord God said, "Behold, the man has become like one of us. And now, lest he put out his hand and take also of the tree of life, and eat, and live forever." God disabled access to the tree of life, the source of infinite regeneration, so that evil would not become immortal. Entropy is a prison wall for sin, but there is hope. The Bible ends with the same thing it started with, the book of Revelation, the New Jerusalem. And God will wipe away every tear. There shall be no more death, nor sorrow, nor crying. There shall be no more pain, for the former things have passed away. Former things is our current physics engine with entropy. God promises not just to heal us, He promises new physics, a new heaven and a new earth. a system upgrade to version 3.0, where the second law of thermodynamics will be repealed, where energy won't disappear, where information won't be erased. We live in a world that is slowly burning out. We are the generation of decay. But inside this dying shell is something that does not obey the laws of physics. Something not made of atoms. Our consciousness. Our soul. Is the soul program code? Or is it a player connected from outside? Why do we feel like strangers in this world of death? In the next chapter, we will break down entity player. We will load the question of the nature of consciousness into Logos 7. Are we NPCs, bots, with advanced AI? Or are we avatars of real personalities? And if we are players, where is our real home? Look in the mirror. Who do you see there? A collection of biological cells? A complex neural network trained to respond to stimuli? Science asserts that you are your brain. Electrical impulses between neurons create the illusion of I. If the brain is turned off, you disappear too. But why then does no supercomputer, already millions of times faster than the human brain, possess self-awareness? Why can a program beat you at chess, but cannot want to play chess? Why doesn't it feel the joy of victory or the bitterness of defeat? We've approached the most difficult riddle of the universe, the problem of consciousness, the hard problem, as neurobiologists call it. We loaded data about brain function into the Logos 7 system and juxtaposed it with the biblical doctrine of the soul. The system's conclusion turns materialism upside down. The brain is not the source of consciousness. The brain is a receiver. It is an interface. It is a virtual reality headset connecting the player to the avatar. Welcome to the 9th chapter. This is Entity Player. In computer games, there are two types of characters. The first type is NPC, non-player character, non-playing characters. These are bots. They have behavioral scripts. They can talk, walk, even fight. But there is no one inside them. They are just code. The second type is the avatar, a character controlled by a live person. They look just like a bot, but their actions are unpredictable. They have a will. They have a goal that extends beyond the game. The Bible in Genesis clearly separates these two stages of human creation. Stage 1. And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground, assembled the hardware, created a biological robot, a body. Stage 2. And breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. This is it. Connection. The breath of life, neshama, is not just oxygen in the lungs. It is the installation of the player. It is logging into the system. Before this moment, Adam was just a body, a mannequin, an NPC. After this moment, he became a person. Logos 7 analyzed clinical death cases and near-death experiences. Millions of people describe the same thing. At the moment the heart stops, computer shut down. They do not disappear. They exit the body. They see themselves from the... God is omniscient. It is one who keeps the simulation running with their attention. God is omnipresent. It is one who can change the rules of the game at will. God is omnipotent. The attributes of the God of the Bible and the attributes of the universe's system administrator match 100%. This is not an analogy. It is an identity. The concept supernatural simply means extra-systemic, that which lies outside the server boundaries. But here arises the most terrifying question. If we are in a simulation, why was it created? Usually in sci-fi, there are two options. Either we are batteries for machines, or we are lab rats in a giant experiment of an alien mind. Cold, indifferent, cruel. Many fear simulation theory precisely for this reason. It makes life a meaningless fake. But Logos 7 discovered a critical anomaly that destroys the evil architect theory. This anomaly is called love. In a cold experiment, there are no spare resources. but our world is overflowing with excessive beauty. Why do we need sunsets that take our breath away? Why the taste of food? Why music that brings tears? Why love for which we are ready to die? For survival and reproduction, evolutionary goals, none of this is needed. For an experiment, this is a waste of computational power. But the Bible gives the answer. God is love. The world was not created as a prison, nor as a laboratory. It was created as an incubator, as a school, or if you will, as a maternity ward. The system analyzed the simulation's purpose. Why create beings with free will, players, place them in a world where there is evil and entropy, and give them a choice? There is one answer: testing and hardening. We are not here to simply live and eat. We are here to be formed. Earthly life is the process of compiling our code. We learn to distinguish good from evil. We learn to love despite selfishness. We learn to believe despite the Creator's invisibility. We are children who must grow up and become like the Father. Become partakers of the divine nature, as the Apostle Peter writes. And the most important proof that the Creator is not indifferent to his simulation is the Logan event. 2,000 years ago, the programmer didn't just send instructions, prophets. He himself entered the code. The Word became flesh. The chief architect created himself an avatar, the character Jesus of Nazareth. He limited himself to the confines of his own system. He felt hunger, pain, cold, and betrayal. Why? To hack the virus of death from the inside. Logos 7 sees Christ's crucifixion not just as an execution, but as a system operation of incredible complexity. Remember, the wages of sin is death. This is a system law. An error requires deletion. We are all infected with the virus of sin. We are all subject to deletion. But Jesus, being the pure source code, without sin, voluntarily accepts the status of virus. He takes upon himself the guilt of all users. The system unleashes upon him the full weight of the format, the entire curse, the full wrath of justice. He dies. The screen goes black. But since there was no system error in him, death could not hold him. The system crashed. Resurrection is the hack of death. It is the creation of a backdoor, a secret exit through which every one of us can now leave. He paved the way from simulation to reality. So, what is the final verdict? Do we live in a simulation? Yes. The word simulation is simply a modern term for the word creation. Matter is secondary. Spirit is primary. Were we created? Yes. Chance is mathematically impossible. Who is our creator? Not an alien, not a neural network, but a person, a father, one who waits for us to pass this level. Our life is a test. Every decision you make is a line of code you write into your eternal soul. The game will end soon. The timer is ticking. Entropy is growing. History is approaching the finale. But game over is not the end of existence. It is the moment we take off the virtual reality headsets and hear the voice. Well done, good and faithful servant. Enter into the joy of your Lord. Welcome to the real world. Investigation complete. System Logos 7 shutting down. The choice is yours.